church we have ever been to. Jesus, God, did not tell the Israelites to whisper around the walls of Jericho. Some people, when you tell them to shout, they shout like this. But boy, I tell you, when they get angry with their husband or wife, they can shout really loud. So shall we really give the Lord a real ruah shout? God has given us victory over our enemies. Yes. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to call on Brian and Shay to come and sit with me right now. Brian and Shay, would you just come up? As time does not permit us to go through all the details, I'm just going to cut it to the place. Yeah, if you can have another mic, if you can get a second mic also. Or maybe you can share the mic, one mic. You have another one? Plenty of mics? That's good. As time will not permit us to go through all the details, but I'll cut to the place, the real highlight point, which is good to know, and we just got to continue to pray for more miracles to happen like this. I'm going to ask Shay and Brian. I remember catching up with you all a few months ago when you all had first contacted me, and you all started coming to some of our meetings. And then one day you gave a call to the Catch the Fire office and left a message saying, Brian is being rushed to hospital in a critical condition. And you asked me whether I could go and pray for him. And I'm sure you were disappointed because I had not gone all day because I was pretty flat out, I couldn't go. By evening, I remember getting a second call from you. And could you tell me what you told me, tell the people what you told me on that second call, if you could recollect, if not, I'll help you.
I just said that Brian is very ill. Because he's in hospital and he's in intensive care, so we need lots of prayer for him. And yeah, he was very seriously ill at that stage.
And you were not quite sure whether he'll make it through the night?
Well, no. I believed, I didn't have a feeling that he wouldn't. It was one of
you had faith that the Lord will see you through.
His nephew thought that, but okay. I had belief. I just had a peace that. Amen. Everything would, be all right, because I prayed a lot. I used to, like when Brian was in hospital, I was down the beach, and I would walk along the beach saying, Jesus, I hand Brian up to you, and I hand his future up to you, and I pray that your arms are around him tight and holding him.
Amen.
Yeah, and okay. I believe.
I'm just going to get Neven to come up also. Neven, can you come up? Now, I'm just taking you through the process because I want you to understand what happened. Was when we got the message, when she called me and said, he's pretty critical right now. Can you go to the hospital, try and get there as soon as you can today, don't wait for tomorrow. I called Neven and I said, Neven, can you come along with me, can we go? So myself and Neven, we went to what hospital, Neven?
Xavier Cabrini. I'll just add one thing. That morning I was in prayer and I was in the intensive care. Didn't know Brian except to catch him down the front. Didn't know his name, knew Shay by sight. I was praying for a family. I was actually in the intensive care, sent away, rebuked, saying this lady, a family friend, was going to die. And I had to leave. But I was praying for that family that morning. I don't usually pray for that family. I'm not usually home at 6 o'clock. I'm working until 11 o'clock. Everyone knows that I don't have late hours. So I find that that's God's hand there alone.
I'll come there. And Catch the Fire team, they get the mic, they don't give it back in a hurry, so you have to take it. Praise God. You'll get used to us. Praise God. So I remember walking up to the Cabrini, going to the Cabrini hospital at about 7:30, I suppose. The one, 8 o'clock might have been cut off time, I don't know, or something like that. But because, of course, I have a credential and I can go in any time, get a free pass to walk into any hospital, which is good. Praise God. Those little cards help a lot. Only for that purpose. Anyway, it's a different story. But we remember ringing the bell at the Cabrini Hospital, at the intense ICU. And the nurse answered and she said, yes. We said we're here to pray for Brian, see Brian Logan. And of course the nurse said, do you know that he's unconscious? She was pretty rude. She was basically trying to tell us, why do you want to see him? He can't see you.
I see you.
So I see you. And so, I actually told the nurse, I'm the pastor and I've come because his wife told me to come to pray for him. So you need to let me come through. So she said, okay, if that's the case, there's someone else at the bedside right now. When they come out, you can go in. So I said, okay. We waited, and a few minutes later, there came the nephew, the niece, her husband, and the nephew. The three of them. Now, when they came out, they met us at the entrance, and they wanted to know who I was. There was a bit of a interrogation, and because who is this fellow who's come to do what is he trying to do? So we said, I'm the pastor. I've come to pray for Brian, and Jay wanted me to come, and they sort of put their shrugged their shoulders a bit and sort of told us, do you really want to go and see him because he's been unconscious for the last so many days? He's not going to know that you have come. It seems like he won't make it through the night. I said, that's okay, we have come now, we want to pray anyway. So of course they hesitantly sort of said, okay, that's fine, and we went in. Now what was interesting is, Neven, now don't take the mic and don't give it back to me. Tell them what happened with the nurse.
Okay, we walked past the room and saw someone, I couldn't tell from the side of my eye whether it was Brian, but someone having a bit of a chat. And so I went up to the desk and said, no, he's over room 2A. And they're very abrupt there, and okay, so we blessed them. And twice we walked past the room, but she said that Brian would be in a near coma and that he's practically sleeping. And we walked past twice. She said, no, room 2A. So we went into room 2A. And the other nurse said, oh, you're wasting your time. I cannot believe in a hospital like St. Francis Xavier could really speak such death. But we just found Brian up talking to the nurse. And that was since Craig, I think, walked out of the ICU.
So what happened was, when we walked into the room, we actually checked with the nurse, where is Brian? She directed us to the room. We went to this room, and we saw the back of a nurse facing a patient sitting on a bed and talking to the nurse. We've been just 30 seconds before that told that this man has been unconscious for the last so many days. So an unconscious man can't be sitting up and talking. So we walked past the room, we went to other rooms, and we went back to the nurse, and she was pretty ticked off with us. She was like, I told you he's in that room. So okay, that's all right, madam. We went back to the room. And so the nurse standing by Brian sort of was hesitant, but made a few comments, and then she moved aside. Brian looked at me and Neven, recognized me, and said, Pastor Danny, thank you for coming. Now what is interesting is, Brian cannot even remember that.
That's right, I can't remember a thing.
What I believe what happened there was, Jesus woke him up, got his spirit alive to receive what we were going to pray. For 30 seconds or 45 seconds, Brian, after days being unconscious, actually revived, sat up on the bed, received us. I said, I'm going to pray for you. He said, thank you, Pastor Danny. And I put a hold on his forehead and I prayed for him. When I finished praying, you call it coma, you call it sleep, I don't know what, but he was not available for talk anymore. So we left the hospital. The next day, Shay, tell us what happened next day. You called me. You called the office and you left a message. Can I refresh your memory or you remember? Thank God the Lord has given me a memory like an elephant.
Well, I can't remember exactly what I said.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
But I'll tell you this is the third time that he was not expected to live.
Wow.
And only last week, the doctor said, my brother went into the hospital and the doctor came in and he said... I know there's a long story. If I go through it, it'll take time. So let me cut to this one again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, on the day after we prayed, I remember you calling and leaving a message, I think with Neven or someone, you said, Brian
is going to work.
No, Brian is improving.
Oh, yeah.
Brian is improving.
Yeah.
3 days later, we got a call which said, Brian has been discharged from hospital and he's at home. 1 week later, we got actually she called me asking, can I come for some counseling with Brian? And I asked her, is Brian at home right now? Because I wanted to talk to Brian. Because according to some people, Brian was not going to make it through the night. And he was pretty terrible, I'll tell you what, when you saw him on that hospital bed. And Shay told me then, Brian has gone to work. I was so surprised. I said, has he really gone to work? Did you drive him to work? She says, no, he drove his car to work. This was a man the week before was at the valley of the shadow of death. And here is a man 1 week later at work. Now there's a work to be completed in Brian's life. Praise God for God's resurrection power, which is alive in you, and we are trusting God for a complete miracle. You want to give God the glory, brother?
Definitely. Just to fill you in, I have a rare form of cancer. It's a neuroendocrine carcinoma, and it's at the stage 4 with a carcinoid syndrome. And it's the carcinoid syndrome that if it goes through basically a flip in my body where it goes very acidic, and I lose the essential minerals, especially potassium. And if you lose potassium, then your heart stops beating and other organs start to fail. And that's how children die in third world countries, not from diarrhea, but they die from losing potassium and simple minerals that can be put back into the body. But if you go beyond the point of becoming too acidic in your body, then it's near impossible to recover that person so that they can survive. And my oncologist told me that I think we have the sodium bicarbonate as a buffer in our body, which should be up at a level of around 16 or higher. Mine, in fact, was down at 1 or 2. So, and it's very difficult for that to be, for the body to recover from that point, and that's why I think the hospital, the nursing staff and so on thought, you know, there was really, that was it for me. But when I did recover, and there were several nurses came up to me and they said they couldn't believe how I'd recovered so quickly. And that quick recovery really can only be put down to prayer. There's no other way, no other explanation for it, and I praise God for that, for Pastor Danny and Neven praying for me. And also, he didn't mention, but there is a very strong prayer group in the church, and they were praying for me as well. So with a great body of believers praying, plus Shay has been in touch with many people, emailing people, and we've got friends overseas and so on. So there's been a great number of people praying for me, and I praise God that, you know, He's working a miracle in my life.
Amen, amen. And I want to tell you, brother, you have a praying wife.
Yes,
your wife has been battling in prayer. She's been on the phone telling us every day, like, you know, can you pray, can you pray? And so thank God for a wife who believes in prayer and seeing God come through. And I'm just going to close by saying this, that doctor, the specialist, I don't know who it is, but someone told you that this is possibly the first in Melbourne, someone who went down to that low level to survive that attack. It was the first in Melbourne, is that correct?
Yes.
Praise God.
Correct.
Thank you, let's give a lot of clap of praise. Praise God. Thank you. Let's take our seats.